Chapter 7. Technically speaking, Colby Finn hadn't done anything illegal, at least nothing the CIA could publicly announce, which made it difficult for Malik to call in favors from local authorities. Their target was on the run with billions of dollars at his disposal, and within the next few hours, he'd be in the wind. Once he fled the Dominican Republic, he might not resurface. Finn's crew of South American treasure hunters had gone missing, but that was being treated as a police investigation in Cartagena. It was of no particular concern to F Division, even if they could prove he was responsible. Besides, this mission was exclusively about magic, not murder, which by definition made it a covert operation. And like all black ops, luxuries that would otherwise be available when an international manhunt was underway, like satellite overwatch and the assistance of foreign governments, would be hard to come by. Nobody wanted to allocate resources and manpower to apprehend someone who, maybe, might have committed some nebulous crime that CIA spooks refused to elaborate on. And it wasn't exactly something you could splash across Interpol's most wanted website. Hey folks, be on the lookout for a hairy, drunk hobbit who uses magic to track down go-dublins wouldn't go over well in a world where the arcane was still very much under wraps. The United States had limited partnerships in the global war on magic, so there weren't many friends Malik could call. Great Britain's Section 8 had fallen out of favor with the CIA after some internal espionage that took place in the late 80s, back when the mystical threat was of far less concern. Germany's Federal Intelligence Service had recently opened an occult division, but were cagey when it came to sharing information. It was the same with Slovakia's Mystical Security Bureau and Italy's Dipartimento di Difesa Occulta. Then there were the countries that refused to admit they discovered magic. Russia's Spetsnaz unit was rumored to have a dedicated Magia force to deal with terrorist organizations related to the occult, but that was still unconfirmed. China remained radio silent on the matter, as were liaisons from India and Japan. The international climate surrounding magic was not unlike the space race of the 1960s. No one was sure which advantages would be gained from becoming the first to plant their flag on the moon, but all parties involved were convinced it was a priority. And, like magic, dominating space was more symbolic than practical, at least on the surface. Beneath the closely guarded political veneer, many were hopeful that weaponization would be the end result. While the Caribbean had been host to a handful of occult-related incidents over the centuries, up to and including the Bermuda Triangle, the Dominican government hadn't offered the slightest hint they were aware of the presence of magical activity, let alone staffing an entire division dedicated to its investigation and elimination. Malik couldn't call them up and paint Colby Finn as a magical threat. He could, however, brand the smarmy jit as a pillager, and pirates have never been welcome guests in the Caribbean. Finn had been in Dominican waters, scouring the ocean for Dominican treasure. He'd taken gold and priceless valuables that were the rightful property of the Dominican people, or at least Malik was hoping they'd see it that way. A quick call to the CIA routed him to an ambassador in Santo Domingo, and Malik explained the situation. "We can avoid an international incident if we work together," he said, doing his best to mimic a BBC reporter, calm and collected, but with a dash of hyperbolic intensity. "If this scoundrel makes it off the island, you'll never have the chance to recover your treasure. The men who died on the yacht were former Dominican military, which means this was likely an inside job. That's how the media will frame it. I wonder who your president will punish if Finn isn't available to stand trial." I'll see what I can do," the ambassador said, his voice quivering. A few minutes later, a manifest appeared on Malik's phone. Every plane that had been chartered at nearby airstrips over the last few hours. A private jet was the quickest way out of the country, and Malik guessed that Finn wouldn't be sticking around long after the shootout. "We saw the crates," Seifert said. "There is no treasure. He either dumped the loot when he saw us coming, or the chests were empty." Malik scrolled through the manifest. "Correct, but the ambassador doesn't know that. though he does know about a dozen former military officers who were blasted into Swiss cheese on a yacht. If that much is true, I knew he'd believe the bit about the treasure. Seifert shook his head. That's what they say about you. Every lie is 80% truth. Don't believe everything you hear, mate. So you're denying it? Well, Malik said absently, it's not completely untrue. And yet, simultaneously, it's not completely accurate either. Wait, I'm confused. So if... Malik interrupted. Here it is. Take a look. There were only 3 private airstrips within driving distance, and a handful of flights had recently been chartered. A Learjet that had just left for Vail, a cargo plane full of medical equipment destined for Shanghai, and a Gulfstream that was going through pre-flight checks, prepped to leave for Calais on the west coast of France. Malik dragged his finger along his phone, magnifying the body of water that separates France and England. This is it. Colby's destination. Seifert squinted at the map. What makes you so sure? The English Channel. The East Indian Trading Company used this route to transport what is now worth billions in gold. After a cyclone tore through the area, it became a graveyard for shipwrecks and a literal gold mine, if you know where to look. The airstrip was Colby's escape hatch. If they left now, they might be able to slam it shut. A taxi dropped Seifert and Malik at the airstrip 30 kilometers north of Santo Domingo. It was a stretch of faded runway lined with crooked palm trees, all leading to a flat white terminal. The sun had gone coppery and dipped out of view, plunging the tarmac into darkness. Floodlights illuminated a single plane in the distance. Seifert popped his suitcase and pulled out a pair of binoculars. He focused on shadowy figures lurking around the private jet. I have eyes on a man who fits Finn's description. Looks like we arrived just in time. He passed the binoculars to Malik. Malik adjusted the focusing knob, and Finn snapped into view. Behind him was a silvery white jet, engines humming, the staircase folded down. A crisp rectangle of light framed the open door. 3 men assisted Finn. 2 were dressed in blue overalls, likely having just finished a pre-flight check. Toolboxes were open at their feet. A third was in slacks and a white polo shirt, running his finger down a tablet. Finn was speaking to the polo shirt when he doubled over, clutching his stomach. And then he changed. His skin began to shimmer, reflecting a hot yellow sheen. The floodlights bounced off of him with a dizzying strobe effect. It was as if he'd been dipped in molten gold. Finn stood upright, holding a sword in each hand, weapons that seemed to have materialized from thin air. But they weren't swords. They were his hands. His fingers and thumbs had liquefied, coalescing into blades as long as he was tall. He lashed out. A pair of horizontal swipes flew in opposite directions. The blades slashed the mechanics across their bellies, spilling their insides onto the pavement with a wet splat. It happened so quickly they didn't have a chance to scream. The man in the polo shirt was bisected so smoothly that his upper half toppled over while his legs remained upright. Then they teetered and fell. "Freeze!" Seifert screamed, weapon drawn. Finn smiled. He turned and sprinted up the staircase into his jet. A few shots rang harmlessly off of Finn's back, deflecting like a handful of marbles on a granite countertop. He didn't even break his stride. Malik drew his weapon and fired at the plane, but Seifert pushed the barrel offline, sending the bullet into the distance. "What the bloody hell?" Malik shouted. "We're not here to cause an international incident." "Incident?" Malik holstered his gun, which looked as ridiculous as you might imagine on someone wearing a tank top and radioactive neon shorts. "We killed a dozen people and just saw 3 more gutted like fish. Do you really think adding an explosion will make a difference at this point?" "We need Finn alive," Seifert said. "And we need to recover his stash. If you blow up the plane, all of this was for nothing." Earlier that day, Finn had fled the yacht with a backpack, no doubt filled with gold. When he ran up the staircase moments ago, he was empty-handed. Or to put a finer point on it, his hands were shaped like swords, dripping with blood and viscera. Either way, he was without any carry-on luggage. Malik and Seaford watched helplessly as the jet vanished into the night sky. They couldn't see it, but Malik was certain Finn was looking out the window, yet again offering the one-fingered salute. They walked across the runway to survey the bodies. Malik found an empty camouflage knapsack. He upended it. Nothing fell out. Seaford scratched the back of his head. So where's the loot? A more pertinent question was this: where was any of the loot? According to the CIA, Colby hadn't made any bank deposits, and the gold wasn't turning up on the black market. He'd made purchases with some of it, but at this point, his hauls would have amounted to metric tons. Even the jet he'd just fled in wouldn't have been large enough to carry all the gold, even if he'd filled it top to bottom. Malik paced the runway, hands on hips. I don't know where the gold is, but we're missing something. Could he have buried it somewhere? I don't think so. Our intel indicates that he's not backtracking. He's been going from one shipwreck to another. He seems to have a sense of urgency, Seaford said. Like he needs it. I guess greed does that to a person. It's like a monster that eats away at you. A monster, Malik thought. Could that be the answer? Had Finn been overtaken by a summoning, a parasitic force that controlled his thoughts and actions? That's what had happened to Malik's last partner, Afra. A conjuring had gone wrong, and she'd become the host to a mass of living darkness. It had infected her to the point that she'd physically transform against her will, losing herself in a sea of tentacles, lashing out at anything around her. It was a logical connection, but this lumbering gold monstrosity that Finn had become was more than that. It had purpose. Summonings are ravenous, single-minded predators who lack earthly desires. This irritating little man was clearly in pursuit of something. Malik stormed off towards the terminal. Let's talk to someone in charge. Assuming Finn had left anyone alive to talk to. The inside of the terminal revealed a depressing gray concrete room with low ceilings and neon lights buzzing overhead. A single desk with a few filing cabinets were the only decor. A kid in a baseball jersey, who looked no more than 20, was reclined in a chair, feet on the desk, laughing hysterically at something on his phone. His earphones prevented him from hearing the doors fly open. Excuse me, Malik said. Nothing. He approached the desk and slapped the surface. Excuse me. The kid glanced up and removed his earphones very slowly. Do you speak English? Malik said, enunciating every syllable. The kid chuckled. Doesn't everybody? His feet were still on the counter. Malik presented his Father Division badge. The acronym meant absolutely nothing to most Americans, let alone the rest of the world, a downside of working at a clandestine shadow division. It's difficult to instill fear and respect in someone who has no idea what the bloody hell you're talking about. Flashing a gold shield, regardless of the context, was often enough to garner respect, though it probably would have carried more weight had Malik not been wearing flip-flops. You're British. The kid glanced at Malik's ridiculous shorts. You look American, though. No offense. None taken. Do you have video cameras on this tarmac? Of course, my friend. The kid dropped his feet to the ground and sat up a little straighter. We'd like to see the footage. I'm sorry. I can't allow that unless you have a warrant or another form of paperwork. The kid rubbed his thumb against his fingers and flashed a knowing smile. Malik drew his gun and placed it gingerly on the desk next to his badge. Let me rephrase, he said cheerfully. Show me the footage right now, or I'll blow your kneecaps off and watch you slowly bleed to death. I don't care how long it takes. I have a full pack of cigarettes and a flask to pass the time. The boy glanced at Seaford, probably hoping the man in the suit would talk some sense into his poorly attired British sidekick. Seaford offered the attendant a half-hearted shrug in response. He'll do it. The man has some serious issues. I never know what the hell he's going to do next. A minute later, they were in the security room of the terminal, which apparently doubled as a break room, judging by the food containers and empty soda cans littering every surface. A small cluster of monitors was piled in the corner next to a computer tower. A pair of fans flanked it, working tirelessly to keep it from overheating. The kid brought up the security footage. The cameras on the tarmac were low quality, but the events unfolding couldn't have been clearer. Colby Finn had arrived, paid in cash, and sloshed the sweat from his hairline with the back of his sleeve. It was a sweltering Dominican afternoon, but Finn didn't just look dehydrated, he looked sick. His eyes were dark, complexion pallid. He could barely stand. Another camera caught a reverse angle where he crept behind the jet he chartered, somewhere he assumed no one was looking. He emptied his knapsack, spilling out what must have been millions in gold. Then he ingested one coin after another, swallowing the currency whole without chewing. He inhaled them. When the feeding frenzy was complete, Finn stood, straightened his shirt, and smiled, instantly satiated. The color returned to his face, and a spring returned to his step. And everything he'd done came snapping into focus. Magic was a reward, but the universe didn't give it away like a cosmic lottery check. It offered trades. Whether he knew it or not, Finn had made a Faustian bargain. "He needs to keep consuming," Malik said. "It's keeping him alive and well. It's the only thing that explains his urgency. He won't run and hide. He's going to be looking for the next shipwreck." They destroyed the security footage and boarded their private jet to Calais. They weren't far behind Finn and knew which airfield he was destined for. Now to figure out how to stop a famished, bulletproof pirate who had no qualms about slicing and dicing anyone in his way. They left in such a hurry that Malik had neglected to use his techno-alchemy watch to charm the kid at the front desk with a compulsion, convincing him that he hadn't seen what he clearly had seen on the monitors. Within a minute of the agent's departure, the kid was on social media telling the entire world that magic existed. No one believed him.